Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are stepping straight into the film room for a deep, cinematic dive into the tactical blueprint of a massive upcoming clash, the Las Vegas Raiders versus the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to strip away the narratives, the broadcast fluff, and those generic talking points you hear everywhere else. Instead, we're going to focus entirely on the line of scrimmage, the offensive identities, and the defensive structures that will actually dictate the outcome of this matchup. But to do this right, we first need to establish our approach. Look, since we're evaluating this on August 24th, just ahead of the scheduled August 28th kickoff, we simply don't have verified active rosters, confirmed quarterback availability, or official injury reports yet. Because of that, our entire analysis today relies on a strict if-then framework, rather than leaning on historical box scores or prior year data. We are essentially building a live game scouting manual for you to use the absolute second the ball is snapped.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the central tactical question, move into the structural paths for both the offenses and defenses, break down the key tactical unit duels, lay out the live in-game state cues you'll need to watch for, and finally, we'll wrap up with the analytics verdict.
Starting off with Section 1, the central tactical question, and projecting the unverified.
So you might be wondering, how exactly do we project a football game when the initial inputs are, well, unverified? It all comes down to the philosophy anchoring this entire explainer. Until availability checks are complete, each team's scoring path is purely conditional based on efficiency, pressure, and field position. We're not going to sit here and invent statistics or claim to know a verified offensive identity for the Raiders or the 49ers today. Instead, we're looking at the foundational possession paths that actually determine American football scoring far more reliably than raw total yardage alone.
And any valid post-verification efficiency model begins right here. Early down expected points added, or EPA for short, along with success rate. For both Las Vegas and San Francisco, we have to identify if their offenses can actually stay out of long yardage situations. Are they utilizing efficient design runs? Are they relying on clean play action throws? Or maybe quick game completions that beat the first tackler? You know, an explosive play is flashy and can alter a score quickly, sure, but repeated, positive, early down plays, that's a much stronger piece of evidence that an offense can actually sustain scoring drives without relying on third-long miracles. Moving right along to Section 2, offensive and defensive structures, focusing on the line of scrimmage battle.
Let's get down into the trenches and examine the baseline tactical requirements. For the offenses in this game, the conditional structural path is pretty clear-cut. You got to stay ahead of the chains, avoid negative plays driven by defensive pressure, and create explosive plays without sacrificing turnover security. On the flip side, the defensive path is equally rigid. Both defenses must win on first down. That means sound run fits, disciplined force players, and rock-solid tackling. If a defense can create predictable passing downs without having to commit extra defenders to the box, well, then they can keep their coverage shells perfectly intact.
Now, when evaluating the pass rush, we have to ruthlessly distinguish between pressure and sacks. This is absolutely crucial. A defense can effectively pressure a quarterback without ever recording a single sack. The real question you should be asking yourself while watching this game is, does the pressure arrive before the intended throwing window opens? Does it force hurried throws, checkdowns behind the sticks, or turnover-worthy decisions? Raw sack totals can be heavily distorted by a quarterback holding onto the ball too long, or maybe a busted protection, or a late-game desperation drive. Pressure that disrupts the launch point, that's the true metric of defensive dominance.
All right, that brings us to Section 3, key tactical unit duels.
These are the specific conditional matchups that'll literally dictate the flow of the game, pending those official roster confirmations, of course. The first crucial duel is the quarterback versus the coverage and pressure plan. When you're watching the broadcast, your live test is to see if the quarterback can identify pressure and deliver the ball on schedule. If a defense uses simulated pressures or five-man rushes and repeatedly forces the quarterback into checkdowns, scrambles, or hurried throws, that offense's early down EPA ceiling absolutely plummets. But if the quarterback answers with quick processing, uses motion to create leverage, and hits accurate intermediate throws, he forces the defense to either concede those efficient underneath gains or drastically loosen up its rush plan.
And that quarterback play builds directly into Duel 2, the offensive line versus the defensive front. The absolute most valuable evidence to look for here is whether interior protection can hold up against a standard four-man rush. If an O-line can carve out 4 to 6 yard first down gains without using heavy personnel, they retain the run/pass ambiguity. The whole play sheet stays open. Holding against that four-man rush allows the offense to send additional eligible receivers into their routes. But if that interior protection completely caves, sack and turnover risks shoot right up as the down and distance deteriorates and play-action credibility is completely neutralized.
Our third duel pits the skilled players against the secondary and tackling integrity. When evaluating receivers, you have to separate actual physical separation and catch-point victories from just being schemed free access. Are they actually winning outside leverage against man coverage? Defensively, missed tackles are the ultimate disruptor here. A missed tackle on a little screen, a quick out, or a simple checkdown can instantly turn a low air yardage call into an explosive play, completely distorting a defense's apparent coverage success. If a defense tackles cleanly on first contact and maintains its too high integrity, it forces the offense into these long, grinding drives, which massively increases their exposure to penalties and turnovers.
Okay, let's jump into Section 4, Live In-Game State Cues.
So we've got the structural paths down. Now let's equip you with exactly what to chart live once the meaningful snaps actually begin. In the first quarter, start by just verifying who is taking the meaningful snaps. Then grade the first two non-garbage possessions for both Vegas and San Francisco. A sustainable edge appears when a team creates positive early down plays, think efficient first down runs or clean play action throws, without relying on third and long conversions to bail them out. So the crucial point here is that early sacks, tackles for loss, procedure penalties, and constantly facing 3rd and 7s are massive predictive warning signs. They tell you way more about an offense's structural health than one broken play long completion ever could.
Let's run through some specific scenarios. What happens if the Raiders take an early lead? Well, that lead is only tactically credible if it's supported by highly efficient early down rushing or passing, manageable protection, and neutral starting field position. A lead built primarily on a fluke kick return, a defensive score, or an isolated short field is fundamentally fragile. If the Raiders are up early just because of short fields, the 49ers can systematically counter by simply winning on first down, avoiding negative plays, and erasing that fragile lead with sustained drive value.
Conversely, if the 49ers grab that early lead, you have to evaluate if it's driven by repeatable early down success and consistent four-man defensive pressure. Another massive cue here is red zone finishing. A team that easily moves between the 20s via explosive plays but constantly settles for field goals, they have a serious finishing issue. If San Francisco falls into this exact trap, the Raiders have to respond by directly attacking the specific coverage answers that gave them their best early down outcomes rather than just abandoning the run after a couple of bad attempts.
Now imagine we enter the fourth quarter tied up or within one score. At this point, throw all those broad team narratives right out the window. Starting field position becomes absolutely paramount. Timeout inventory is going to strictly dictate fourth down aggressiveness. In this high-leverage scenario, expect a significant increase in defensive disguise, pressure variation, and leverage on primary targets. Therefore, the decisive live question becomes, does the quarterback have reliable hot route answers before the pressure gets home? Avoiding unblocked pressure and those fatal third down sacks will outright decide the game in this state.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the final analytics verdict.
Let's look at the mathematical projections, but we really need to understand their limitations in this specific context. Our pregame model shows a win probability split of 49.3% for the Raiders, 49.3% for the 49ers, and a 1.4% chance of a regulation tie. The projected score sits at a dead even 21-21. Look, we are presenting these numbers entirely neutrally. It is vital to understand that this symmetric distribution is a low-confidence placeholder estimate. It is absolutely not a claim that these two teams have equal offensive or defensive quality. Because we are missing the current verified football inputs for this match, the model explicitly defaults to this neutral baseline.
And honestly, this perfectly highlights a core tenet of our work here. Supplying false precision outright violates true analytical principles. A genuine moneyline edge requires defensible, verified drive efficiency data, a documented difference in turnover risk, and confirmed late-game personnel. And frankly, none of that is verified yet. A team can easily outgain its opponent in total yardage and still lose the whole game if sacks, short field concessions, or red zone failures destroy their underlying drive value. That 21-21 score is an intentional placeholder, reflecting a deliberate lack of invented precision.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to take with you into the broadcast. When the ball is finally kicked off, which team will establish the first credible tactical edge by creating manageable second downs while simultaneously preventing pressure-driven negative plays? Apply this conditional blueprint live, watch the line of scrimmage, and the true trajectory of the game will reveal itself long before the final whistle.